The most striking images don't always shout. Sometimes they whisper. They find power in what's not there, letting simplicity carry more weight than complexity. In that quiet space, everything that truly matters stands out, impossible to ignore. It's in the space between what we choose to show and what we leave behind that the photograph comes alive, revealing the story we could never tell with words. Photography often pushes us to capture more. More subjects, more angles, more details. But the most powerful images don't come from filling the frame. They come from knowing what to let go. The best photos don't draw their strength from excess, but from intentionality, choosing what stays, what goes, and what deserves attention. But if simplicity is so powerful, why do so many of us struggle to embrace it? Why does the instinct to add more, to fill the frame, to pack in details feel so natural? It's because photography, at its core, is an act of capturing. We're drawn to moments, scenes, and stories, and we want to include as much as possible to make sure nothing is lost. But in that effort to show everything, we often dilute the very essence of what makes an image strong. Minimalism in photography is not just a style, it's a philosophy. It's about being deliberate in what we leave behind and intentional in what remains. When done well, minimalist photography doesn't feel empty or lacking. It feels purposeful, refined, and deeply expressive. So, how do we apply this to our work? What makes a minimalist composition truly powerful? In this episode, we'll break down the key principles: how negative space, subject isolation, and the removal of distractions shape the visual language of minimalism. By the end, we won't just understand what makes minimalism work, we'll have the tools to start applying it to our own photography. So let's begin. If minimalism is about clarity, then why is it so difficult to achieve? Why do so many of us instinctively fill the frame rather than simplify it? The answer is simple. We fear that if we don't include everything, something important will be lost. We worry that a photo with too few elements might feel empty, unfinished, or lacking in depth. This instinct comes from a natural desire to capture as much as possible, to tell a complete story in a single frame. We see an interesting background and don't want to exclude it. We notice small details and feel they add meaning. Before we know it, our image becomes cluttered, filled with competing elements that pull attention in too many directions. Instead of guiding the viewer's eye, we leave them searching for what matters most. The irony is that in trying to show everything, we often weaken the image. The subject gets lost in visual noise, the composition lacks focus, and the emotional impact becomes diluted. A great photograph doesn't need to include everything. It needs to include the right things. That's where minimalism comes in. Minimalism forces us to make choices. It challenges us to strip away distractions until only the most essential elements remain. Instead of capturing a chaotic scene and hoping something resonates, we become more deliberate, more precise. We ask ourselves, what truly matters in this frame? What is essential? What is unnecessary? By shifting our mindset from how much can I include to how little do I need, we begin to unlock the real power of minimalist photography. So, how do we put this into practice? How do we train ourselves to see minimalism in the world around us? To answer that, we need to break down what makes minimalist photography work, starting with the core principles that define it. Minimalist photography isn't about taking empty pictures. It's about clarity. At its core, Minimalism is about creating an image where everything has a reason to exist and nothing competes for attention. It's photography at its most deliberate, where every choice is made with intention and nothing is left to chance. Minimalism has three defining characteristics: simplicity, negative space, and intentionality. Simplicity is what makes the image feel effortless. There's nothing extra, nothing distracting, just the subject and its relationship to the space around it. Negative space isn't just emptiness, it's a tool. It directs attention, creates atmosphere, and makes the subject feel more powerful by contrast. Intentionality is what separates a minimalist image from just an underwhelming one. Every element, the subject, the framing, the balance of light and dark, serves a purpose. Nothing is random. Minimalism teaches us that we don't need more to create something meaningful. In fact, by embracing less, we often reveal more. Minimalist photography isn't just about seeing, it's about making intentional choices every time you pick up the camera. To create images that embrace simplicity and focus, we have to train ourselves to strip away the unnecessary, refine our composition, and become more deliberate with what we choose to include. So where do we start? Let's break down a step-by-step approach to creating minimalist images that are strong, clear, and visually compelling. The first step is understanding negative space, not as emptiness, but as an active part of the composition. Negative space is what gives a subject room to breathe. When used effectively, negative space doesn't just frame a subject, it makes it feel more powerful. Instead of crowding an image with details, start asking, how much space does my subject need to make an impact? Next, emphasizing a single subject is key to making minimalism work. A strong minimalist composition isn't about having fewer elements. It's about making the right elements stand out. That means isolating the subject in a way that makes it undeniable. Look for clean backgrounds, use framing techniques to remove distractions, and make sure nothing in the frame pulls attention away from the story you're trying to tell. If your viewer's eye can't immediately find the focal point, the image isn't truly minimalist. Another powerful tool in minimalist photography is simplifying your color palette. Bold, striking minimalism often comes from the use of limited color. A single pop of red in a muted scene, a high contrast black and white composition that removes distractions, a photo bathed in a single hue where tone and texture do all the storytelling. Colors, like objects, can compete for attention, so stripping them down to the essentials forces the viewer to focus on the most important aspects of the image. Finally, light and shadow become the most important tools in a minimalist photographer's toolkit. Without excess details to rely on, light itself becomes part of the composition. Harsh shadows can carve out shapes. A single beam of light can direct the viewer's eye. The way highlights and shadows interact with negative space can create drama, emotion, and depth. Start looking at light not just as illumination, but as a design element in your frame. Minimalist photography is about more than taking simple photos. It's about training your eye to see differently, compose intentionally, and remove distractions with confidence. By applying these techniques, mastering negative space, isolating your subject, simplifying colors, and harnessing light, you'll start creating images that feel stronger, clearer, and more powerful. Minimalism isn't confined to a single type of photography. It's a way of seeing. Whether capturing vast landscapes, intimate portraits, or abstract compositions, the principles of minimalism apply universally. It's not just about empty space. It's about making deliberate choices, knowing what to include, and more importantly, what to leave out. In landscape photography, minimalism is often expressed through vast open spaces. A lone tree standing in a field, a ripple in an otherwise still lake, a desert landscape where a single dune leads the eye into the distance. These compositions work because they isolate one key element, allowing it to exist without competition. The negative space in the sky or the expanse of water isn't empty, It's what gives the subject power. The scene breathes, and in that breath, the viewer finds clarity. In portrait photography, minimalism isn't just about the background, it's about emotional focus. A tight composition that isolates a subject's face against a clean, neutral backdrop. A silhouette that strips away detail, leaving only form and emotion. A hand gripping a collar, telling a story without showing the rest of the body. These choices eliminate distractions so that every detail left in the frame carries weight. The expression, the posture, the light, they all become more potent because there's nothing competing for attention. In abstract photography, minimalism allows us to see beauty in the simplest forms. A shadow cast on a blank wall, the curve of a staircase reduced to shape and contrast, a splash of color in an otherwise muted scene. These images strip reality down to its essence, forcing us to look at ordinary things in a new way. Minimalism in this context isn't just about what the subject is, it's about how it makes us feel. No matter the genre, minimalist photography demands intention. It forces us to think, to refine, to strip away everything that isn't necessary, and in doing so, it gives us something rare, images that aren't just seen, but felt. Throughout this episode, we've explored what minimalism is, why it works, and how we can apply it in our own photography. We've seen how negative space creates breathing room, how isolating a subject brings clarity, how simplifying color enhances impact, and how light and shadow shape composition. These principles aren't just tools, they're a mindset shift, one that challenges us to think more intentionally about every frame we capture. But understanding minimalism isn't enough. We have to practice it. The next time you're composing a shot, pause for a moment and ask yourself, what can I remove? What truly matters in this frame? Experiment with negative space, play with light, and push yourself to see the world with a minimalist eye. With time, you'll start to notice how a simple shift in perspective can transform the way you create. Minimalism is about trusting in simplicity, trusting that less can in fact be more. When we let go of the urge to overfill our images, we create a space for something deeper, something that isn't just seen, but felt. In the next episode, we'll break down how to use negative space effectively, why it matters, and how it can make your photos stronger, more intentional, and more visually compelling. By the end, you will know how to harness empty space, not as a void, but as a design element that elevates your images. So if you're ready to take your minimalist photography to the next level, stay tuned. The Art of Negative Space is up next.